There's a weapon whispered about in the shadows of history, one said to hold power so immense it could shape the fate of empires. This is the spear of destiny, the very lance that pierced the side of Jesus Christ as he hung on the cross. According to legend, whoever possesses it becomes invincible, commanding unstoppable might. But is this just a myth, or could there be terrifying truth behind the stories? From the hands of Roman centurions to the desperate grasp of Adolf Hitler, this artifact has left a trail of obsession, bloodshed, and eerie coincidences that defy explanation. What if I told you that this spear wasn't just a relic, but a key to understanding some of history's darkest turns? Picture this, a simple iron spearhead, rusted with age, yet radiating an almost supernatural allure. For centuries, emperors, conquerors, and tyrants have fought to claim it, convinced it held the power to tip the scales of destiny in their favor. Charlemagne carried it into battle, believing it made him unbeatable until the day he dropped it and died moments later. Napoleon sought it, desperate to unlock its secrets, and then there's Hitler, whose fanatical pursuit of the spear bordered on madness, convinced that controlling it would ensure his reign of terror. How could one object inspire such desperation? What hidden force, real or imagined, lurks within its blade? Today, we're diving deep into the enigma of the Spear of Destiny, unraveling the tangled web of history, legend, and chilling possibility. We'll trace its path through time, separating fact from folklore and asking the spine-tingling question, could this spear truly alter the course of human events? From ancient battlefields to the vaults of modern museums, its journey is a labyrinth of mystery, one that might just rewrite everything we thought we knew about power, fate, and the unseen forces that shape our world. Buckle up, this isn't just a story, it's an investigation into the unknown. The story of the Spear of Destiny begins not on a battlefield, but at the foot of the cross, where a single act of violence transformed an ordinary weapon into an object of divine mystery. According to the Gospel of John, a Roman centurion named Longinus thrust his lance into the side of Jesus as he hung crucified, piercing his ribs. Yet in that moment of brutality, something extraordinary happened. Water and blood flowed from the wound, an event early Christians saw as symbolic of baptism and redemption. Legends say Longinus, once blind in one eye, was healed when drops of that same blood touched him, marking the spear not just as a tool of death but as a conduit for miracles. By the 4th century, the spear's legend had grown. Saint Helena, the mother of Emperor Constantine, embarked on a holy quest to recover relics tied to Christ's passion. Tradition claims she found the spear in Jerusalem, its identity confirmed by the unshakable faith of believers. Suddenly, this weapon wasn't just a historical artifact, it became a sacred treasure, venerated in churches and carried into war by kings who believed it carried divine favor. The spear's journey from biblical obscurity to revered relic raises a haunting question. Did its power come from God or from the desperate hopes of those who wielded it? Early chronicles tell of emperors who clung to the spear as a talisman, convinced its presence could turn the tides of destiny. Some accounts describe strange phenomena, battles won against impossible odds, enemies struck by sudden fear at the sight of its glinting blade. Yet skeptics argue these stories were crafted by rulers hungry for legitimacy, weaving miracles into their reigns. The truth may lie somewhere in between. Whether by divine intervention or sheer force of belief, the Spear of Destiny had already cemented its place as history's most coveted relic long before kings and conquerors would bleed for it. By the time the Spear of Destiny reached medieval Europe, its legend had taken on a life of its own, woven into the very fabric of power and divine right. Among the most famous of its alleged wielders was Charlemagne, the towering figure who forged an empire from the ashes of Rome's collapse. Chronicles claim he carried the spear into 47 battles, never once tasting defeat, as if its presence alone could bend fate to his will. But the stories take a darker turn. In the year 814, during his final campaign, Charlemagne supposedly dropped the spear while crossing a river. Within moments, he fell gravely ill, dying just days later. Coincidence or proof of the spear's chilling curse, that to lose it was to lose one's life? Otto the Great, the 10th century Holy Roman Emperor, was no less obsessed. He wielded the spear as a symbol of God's favor, embedding it into coronation rituals to cement his authority. To Otto, it wasn't just a relic. It was a political weapon, a divine stamp of approval that silenced rivals and awed subjects. The spear's presence at his coronation in Rome wasn't ceremonial theatrics. It was a calculated move, linking his rule to the very blood of Christ. And it worked. His reign marked a turning point for the fractured empire, as if the spear's mythical power had somehow seeped into his legacy. Yet the most unsettling tales come from the margins of history, whispers of lesser-known rulers who gambled everything on the spear's promise, only to meet abrupt, inexplicable ends. One duke, said to have stolen the relic for his own ambitions, was found dead in his bedchamber the next morning, his face frozen in terror. A bishop who scoffed at its power reportedly collapsed mid-sermon, clutching his chest. Fact or folklore, these stories share an eerie pattern. The spear giveth and the spear taketh away. What's fascinating is how medieval Europe transformed the spear from a battlefield relic into a theatrical prop of kingship. Coronations featured it prominently, as if placing it in a new ruler's hands could transfer some hidden cosmic authority. The message was clear. This wasn't just a king crowned by men, but one anointed by destiny itself. And yet, for all its pomp, the spear's true power might have been far simpler, the unshakable belief of those who held it. After all, in an age where faith moved mountains, who's to say a rusted lance couldn't shake empires? The line between myth and reality blurs here, leaving us to wonder, did these rulers wield the spear, or did the spear wield them? By the dawn of the Renaissance, the spear of destiny had found its way into the hands of the Habsburgs, Europe's most formidable dynasty, rulers of an empire where the sun never set. But this wasn't just another jewel in their crown. The Habsburgs enshrined the spear in Vienna's imperial treasury, placing it alongside the crown of Charlemagne and the sword of St. Maurice, a trinity of power meant to legitimize their divine right to rule. Here, the spear wasn't merely displayed, it was staged. Behind velvet ropes and gilded casings, it became a prop in a grand political theater, its very presence whispering to subjects and rivals alike, this family rules because God wills it. The Habsburgs didn't just possess the spear, they weaponized its legend. During coronations, the relic was paraded through the streets of Vienna, its iron tip catching the light as crowds knelt in awe. Court historians penned elaborate accounts linking the dynasty's victories to the spear's mystical patronage, spinning defeats into mere tests of faith. When the Ottomans besieged Vienna in 1529, Habsburg propagandists claimed the mere sight of the spear on the city's walls struck terror into the enemy's heart. Never mind that the siege was broken by Polish cavalry, the myth persisted, blurring history into holy spectacle. Yet the spear's display in the imperial treasury reveals a darker truth about its power, not as a supernatural force, but as a mirror of human ambition. The Habsburgs knew relics were currency, and they curated their collection with ruthless precision. Each artifact, from the Holy Grail to the nails of the true cross, served a purpose: to construct an unshakable narrative of divine favor. The spear, center stage in this sacred hoard, became a psychological weapon. Rivals who doubted Habsburg authority weren't just challenging a family, they were defying the will of heaven itself. Rituals surrounding the spear were equally calculated. On feast days, it was removed from its case and swathed in cloth woven with golden threads, carried by bishops whose robes brushed the floors of the Habsburg palace. The message was clear: this wasn't just a relic, it was a living conduit to God, and the Habsburgs were its chosen custodians. Even the act of viewing it was controlled. Commoners could only glimpse it from afar, while foreign ambassadors were led closer, close enough to see the rust pitting its blade, a deliberate reminder of its ancient, bloody origins. But cracks in the facade began to show. As Enlightenment thinkers questioned the divine right of kings, the spear's aura faltered. By the time Napoleon's armies marched into Vienna in 1805, carting off the imperial regalia as war trophies, the Habsburg sacred narrative unraveled. Notably, the spear was left behind not out of reverence, but because Napoleon, ever the pragmatist, saw it for what it was, an old spearhead valuable only for the stories men told about it. The Habsburgs reclaimed it after his fall, but the world had changed. The spear no longer commanded armies, it gathered dust behind glass, a curiosity for tourists rather than a talisman for emperors. And yet, its legacy as a tool of power endures. In the cold glow of museum lights, it asks us a quieter, more unsettling question. Did the spear ever truly hold power, or was it always just a shadow cast by the blinding light of human belief? Napoleon Bonaparte's relationship with the Spear of Destiny is a swirling mix of fact, speculation, and the kind of dramatic irony that history loves best. When his troops stormed Vienna in 1805, the spear was there abandoned in the Habsburg treasury, no longer the centerpiece of imperial power but still heavy with legend. And here's where the story gets murky. Popular myth insists Napoleon, ever the student of symbolism, sought the spear deliberately, believing its possession would cement his invincibility. But the historical record tells a quieter tale. While he did confiscate the Habsburg crown jewels as war trophies, the spear itself was left behind, catalogued as just another relic among many. Was this a calculated snub, or did Napoleon, the arch-rationalist, dismiss its power outright? The legends, though, refuse to let logic have the last word. Whispers persist that Napoleon's advisors urged him to take the spear, warning of its rumored curse that to possess it was to rule, but to lose it was to fall. By 1812, as his Grand Army froze in the Russian winter, the superstitions resurfaced. His soldiers, marching home in tattered ranks, reportedly murmured about the spear they never claimed, as if its absence had doomed their emperor. Even Napoleon's final defeat at Waterloo became fodder for mystics, who spun it as destiny's revenge for ignoring the Relic's call, but let separate rumor from reality. Napoleon's downfall had far more to do with overextended supply lines and coalitions of enemies than any cursed artifact. Yet the persistent linking of his failures to the spear speaks volumes about its grip on the human imagination. In a twist worthy of Greek tragedy, the man who reshaped Europe with sheer will might have been undone not by a spear, but by the stories about the spear. After all, Napoleon understood power better than most, and power, whether divine or political, has always been a game of perception. The Habsburgs knew it. Hitler, as we'll see, would take that lesson to monstrous extremes. Long before the swastika banners unfurled across Germany, a young, penniless Adolf Hitler stood frozen in Vienna's Hofburg Palace, his eyes locked on a rusted spearhead behind glass. It was 1909, and the future dictator, then a failing artist surviving on bread and bitterness, felt something crack open inside him. Later, he described the moment as revelation. This spear had decided empires. And now it was calling to him. Whether it was divine intervention or the delusion of a man hungry for purpose, one thing became clear: Hitler's obsession with the spear of destiny wasn't just fascination. It was possession. The spear's legend, steeped in blood and mysticism, fit like a missing piece into Hitler's twisted ideology. He devoured occult texts, whispering with secret societies like the Thule Society, where members spun theories of ancient Aryan supermen and lost relics of ultimate power. To them, the spear wasn't just a Christian relic, it was a Germanic birthright, stolen by history and waiting to be reclaimed. Hitler became convinced it held the key to shaping the world, a tangible link to the divine force he believed would anoint him as history's greatest conqueror. His speeches began weaving cryptic references to the weapon of destiny, a nod only his inner circle understood. Then came the Anschluss, Hitler's annexation of Austria in 1938. As crowds cheered or cowered under Nazi flags, a team of SS officers marched into the Hofburg with a singular mission: seize the spear. They handled it like a nuclear secret, whisking it to Nuremberg under armed guard and enshrining it in a purpose-built vault beneath St. Catherine's Church. Here, the Nazis staged eerie rituals, bathing it in torchlight as high-ranking officers swore oaths over its blade. Heinrich Himmler reportedly ordered occult tests, attempting to harness its supposed energy. The message was chillingly clear: the Third Reich wasn't just collecting artifacts. It was assembling an arsenal of myth, but the darkest twist, Hitler's own superstition about the spear's curse. According to his confidants, he grew paranoid that losing it would mean losing the war. So when Allied bombs began raining on Nuremberg in 1944, he ordered the spear evacuated to a fortified bunker alongside trainloads of stolen gold and art. The irony is staggering. The man who mocked religion as weakness had staked his empire on a rusty relic, and when General Patton's troops recovered it in a salt mine in 1945, the Nazi collapse was already complete. Coincidence or proof that the spear's true power was never in magic, but in the madness of those who believed in it? What makes Hitler's fixation so unsettling isn't just the scale of his delusion. It's how the spear became a mirror for his ideology. Just as he twisted history to fit his narrative, he reshaped the relic's meaning, transforming a symbol of divine mercy into a weapon of conquest. In the end, the spear didn't grant him invincibility. It exposed his fatal flaw, the belief that destiny could be stolen rather than earned, and that's the terrifying lesson here. Whether cursed or merely cursed by association, the spear of destiny reveals a truth far older than Hitler, that absolute power corrupts but absolute belief. That can destroy empires. The moment the spear of destiny fell into Nazi hands, its story twisted into something darker, a relic not of divine power but of propaganda and paranoia. After seizing it from Vienna in 1938, the Nazis didn't just stash it away, they staged an elaborate spectacle. Nuremberg, the city of Nazi rallies and torchlit processions, became the spear's new shrine. Hidden beneath St. Catherine's Church, it was displayed like a war trophy, bathed in eerie candlelight during secret midnight ceremonies. High-ranking SS officers, steeped in occult obsession, reportedly whispered incantations over its rusted blade, convinced it could amplify their so-called Aryan destiny. The spear wasn't just a symbol anymore, it was a psychological weapon meant to convince both followers and enemies that the Third Reich's victory was preordained. But as Allied bombs began leveling German cities, the spear's role shifted from talisman to fugitive. In 1944, with Nuremberg's streets crumbling under fire, Hitler ordered it smuggled to safety. The destination, a labyrinth of tunnels in the Altersee salt mines, a hidden vault where the Nazis hoarded stolen art, gold, and relics they deemed too powerful to lose. Buried deep underground, the spear sat alongside looted treasures like Michelangelo's Bruges Madonna, and the Ghent altarpiece, a silent witness to the regime's desperate final act. Then came the Americans. In May 1945, soldiers from the Third Army's 86th Infantry Division breached the mine, uncovering a trove of cultural plunder. Among the crates and canvases, they found the spear, wrapped in velvet and tucked inside a lead-lined case. And here's where myth collides with history. General George S. Patton, a man known for his larger-than-life persona and fascination with history, reportedly held the spear in his hands. Some accounts claim he trembled, overwhelmed by its legend. Others say he scoffed, dismissing it as superstition. The truth, Patton was a collector of artifacts, yes, but there's no evidence he sought to keep the spear for himself. Unlike Hitler, he didn't see relics as keys to power, just fragments of a war he'd helped end. The real intrigue lies in the rumors that followed. Conspiracy theorists insist Allied leaders Churchill, Roosevelt, even Eisenhower secretly coveted the spear, launching covert missions to secure its power. But archives tell a different story. The spear was catalogued, studied, and quietly returned to Austria in 46, along with hundreds of other stolen items. No shadowy deals, no whispered conferences, just the meticulous work of the Monument's men, the Allied unit tasked with rescuing Europe's cultural heritage. What's revealing isn't the spear's journey during the war, but the way its myth outlived the conflict. For the Nazis, it was proof of their invincibility. For the Allies, it was proof of their delusion. And that's the irony. The Spear of Destiny didn't decide the war's outcome, but it did expose the fatal flaw of those who believed it could. Whether hidden in a salt mine or displayed in a museum, its true power was never supernatural. It was the power of belief itself, the kind that builds empires and the kind that destroys them. When the dust of World War II settled, the Spear of Destiny's journey took an unexpected turn, one wrapped in bureaucracy, whispered theories, and the simmering tensions of the Cold War. In January 1946, American officials formally returned the spear to Austria, transporting it back to Vienna's Kunsthistorisches Museum with as much fanfare as a tax audit. There were no grand ceremonies, no headlines proclaiming its homecoming, just a crate among crates signed over like surplus office furniture. But beneath this mundane handoff, questions festered. Was this even the same spear Hitler had coveted, or had something or someone interfered along the way? Almost immediately, conspiracy theorists pounced. Some claimed the Americans had switched the relic with a replica, spiriting the real spear away to some shadowy vault. Others whispered that Nazi holdouts had stolen it during the chaos of Germany's collapse, leaving behind a forgery to appease the Allies. The most outlandish tales spoke of midnight rituals in the salt mines, where SS officers had channeled the spear's energy into hidden weapons programs, a notion that, however absurd, found eerie echoes in real-life Nazi experiments with the occult. Even the Soviets got dragged into the speculation, with rumors alleging Stalin had dispatched his own agents to seize the artifact, convinced it could tip the balance of the emerging Cold War. The truth, as always, was less cinematic. Forensic analysis in the 1950s confirmed the spear's medieval origins, dating it to the 7th or 8th century, centuries too young to have pierced Christ's side. But here's the twist: that didn't matter. For over 1,000 years, this particular spear had been believed to be the genuine article, its power amplified by faith rather than facts. The Habsburgs knew it, Hitler knew it, and now, displayed behind bulletproof glass in Vienna, it posed a quieter question. Does authenticity even matter when the stories we tell hold more force than history itself? Yet the Cold War injected new paranoia into the Relic's legacy. In 1958, a former Nazi intelligence officer named Wilhelm Bernhardt published a book alleging the spear in Vienna was a fake, and that the real one had been smuggled to Antarctica. Yes, Antarctica, hidden in a secret bunker beneath the ice. The claim was patently absurd, but it tapped into a cultural moment obsessed with hidden Nazi bases and lost super weapons. Even today, fringe historians point to oddities in the museum's records, gaps in the chain of custody, or the spear's suspiciously good condition post-war as proof of a cover-up. What's fascinating isn't the conspiracy theories themselves, but why they persist. The Spear of Destiny, more than most relics, seems to invite speculation. Maybe it's the chilling connection to Hitler, or the way its legend twists through pivotal moments in history. Or maybe it's simpler. In a world where power so often feels arbitrary, we crave objects that promise order, tools to explain why some rise and others fall. The spear, whether real or replica, divine or delusion, endures because it lets us believe, even for a moment, that destiny isn't random, and that's a story no museum label can ever contain. Science has a way of stripping away legend to reveal something far more complex, and the Spear of Destiny is no exception. In the late 1990s, researchers at the Vienna Kunsthistorisches Museum subjected the relic to rigorous testing, aiming to settle centuries of debate. X-ray fluorescence scans and metallurgical analysis revealed a surprising truth. The spear's iron core dates not to the time of Christ, but to the 7th or 8th century, the height of the early medieval world. At first glance, this seems like a death blow to its authenticity. How could a spearhead forged 600 years after the crucifixion be the legendary weapon that pierced Jesus' side? But dig deeper and the story gets murkier. The tests also uncovered something tantalizing: traces of an older nail, possibly Roman in origin, embedded within the spear's base. Some scholars speculate this nail could have been a relic within a relic, intentionally sealed inside the medieval blade to sanctify it. Imagine a craftsman in Charlemagne's era, hammering a sacred fragment, perhaps a nail believed to be from the true cross, into a new spearhead, creating a physical link to the original event. It's a theory that bridges faith and forensics, suggesting the spear might be a kind of holy collage blending history with ritual. The implications are profound. If the spear contains even a sliver of first-century material, its veneration by emperors and conquerors takes on new meaning. Suddenly, the legends of miracles and curses aren't just medieval superstition, they're reactions to an object that may have been designed to feel sacred. The Habsburgs, who displayed it so theatrically, likely knew this. Hitler, who fetishized it, wouldn't have cared either way, because here's the paradox: the spear's power never depended on being genuine. It depended on people believing it was. Yet science offers another twist. The spear's composition matches other Carolingian-era weapons, suggesting it was forged not as a religious object but as a battle-ready lance, one later repurposed as a relic. This raises a chilling possibility. What if the Spear of Destiny began as an ordinary weapon, and its holiness was retroactively stitched onto it by rulers hungry for legitimacy? That would make it the ultimate political prop, a blank slate for ambition dressed up as destiny. The nail inside adds another layer. Roman crucifixion nails were rare but not unheard of in medieval reliquaries, often smuggled from the Holy Land as pilgrimage souvenirs. If this one was authentic, who placed it there and why? Some historians point to Saint Helena, the 4th century empress who famously collected crucifixion artifacts. Others argue it was a later addition, a clever forgery to boost the spear's prestige. Either way, the nail's presence transforms the spear from a mere curiosity into a puzzle with missing pieces, one where faith, fraud, and history collide. What's striking is how little any of this diminishes the spear's allure. Whether it's a medieval replica, a sacred Frankenstein, or something in between, its journey through history proves a single truth: objects don't wield power. People do. The Spear of Destiny's real magic wasn't in its metal, but in the hands that gripped it, hands that shaped empires, spilled blood, and rewrote the world's story, one legend at a time. At first glance, the Spear of Destiny looks deceptively simple: a slender iron blade, darkened by centuries of oxidation, mounted on a wooden shaft long since lost to time. But peer closer and its secrets start to unravel. The most striking feature is a jagged hole near the base where forensic scans revealed something astonishing. A nail, possibly Roman-era iron, driven straight through the core of the weapon. This isn't just random damage. The nail's placement is precise, intentionally wedged into the spearhead like a sacred insert, as if someone centuries ago sought to fuse two relics into one. Could this be a fragment from the true cross hammered into the blade to sanctify it? Or was it a medieval forger's clever trick meant to manufacture holiness where none existed? Then there's the gold sleeve encircling the spear's midsection, a later addition, likely from the 10th century, engraved with intricate Latin inscriptions. The words "Claimus Christi confera hoc pomi," "we claim this trophy of Christ's victory," twist around the metal like a divine claim staked in precious metal. But here's the catch: gold sleeves weren't uncommon for medieval relics. They served as both decoration and authentication. a way to certify an object's holiness for skeptical pilgrims. The sleeve's craftsmanship is undeniably Carolingian, matching artifacts from Charlemagne's era, but its message feels performative, less a divine proclamation than a political one. After all, relics were big business in medieval Europe, and attaching a golden label was the equivalent of slapping "official" on a questionable artifact. The inscriptions themselves deepen the mystery. Alongside the Latin, faint runic symbols hide in the spear's crevices scratched markings that don't match the sleeve's elegant script. Some researchers argue these are maker's marks, the signature of a Frankish blacksmith. Others see them as coded charms, pagan blessings hastily Christianized. The most compelling theory, their repair notations added when the spear was damaged in battle and hastily reforged. Imagine a medieval armorer tasked with fixing a holy relic, leaving behind tiny graffiti as he worked. It's a reminder that even objects of legend were subject to the wear and tear of history. Now, let's talk about the iron. Metallurgical analysis shows its high-quality Frankish steel, forged not in the arid heat of Jerusalem but in the smoky workshops of early medieval Europe. The carbon content matches swords from the 8th century, and the blade's tapering suggests it was designed for combat, not ceremony. This raises a provocative question. Was the spear originally just a warrior's lance, later rebranded as a relic? Or did craftsmen deliberately mimic older techniques to create a convincing fake? The nail embedded within complicates things further. Its iron composition aligns with Roman crucifixion nails found in Judea, but without DNA evidence, an impossibility after centuries of handling, we're left with tantalizing speculation. Perhaps the most damning evidence against the spear's divine origins is its condition. Relics tied to Christ's passion, like the Shroud of Turin or the Crown of Thorns, typically show signs of ritualized wear, patterns of veneration etched into their surfaces. But the spear's damage tells a different story. The tip is bent, not from a pierce but from impact, as if it struck armor or shield. The edges bear the nicks and grooves of a weapon that saw battle, not the careful handling of a sacred object. Even the nail's placement feels tactical, driven into the blade's weakest point, where it would reinforce the structure during thrusts. So where does this leave us? The Spear of Destiny is a patchwork of contradictions, a blend of battlefield pragmatism and sacred theater. The nail might be genuine, but its insertion feels staged. The gold sleeve proclaims holiness, but its craftsmanship screams imperial propaganda. Even the inscriptions hint at layers of meaning, each added by a different hand for a different purpose. In the end, the spear's true power lies not in what it is, but in what we've needed it to be: a mirror for faith, a blank canvas for ambition, and a reminder that sometimes the most enduring legends are the ones we stitch together ourselves. The Spear of Destiny in Vienna isn't alone in its claim to holiness, far from it. Across Europe and the Middle East, at least 4 other lances vie for the title of the true lance, each wrapped in its own web of faith, politics, and historical sleight of hand. Take the Vatican's version, displayed in St. Peter's Basilica, a slender, silver-cased reliquary said to encase a fragment of the original spearhead. Unlike Vienna's battle-worn blade, this one is all pageantry, designed for processions, not war. Its history is murkier too. Medieval popes allegedly received it from Byzantine emperors, who themselves may have inherited it from Jerusalem or invented the lineage entirely. The Vatican lance's power lies not in its physical form, but in its proximity to the seat of Catholic authority. If the Habsburgs used their spear to legitimize kings, the Vatican's became a tool of spiritual control, a reminder that divine favor flowed through Rome alone. Then there's the lance in Armenia's Etchmiadzin Cathedral, revered as the Spear of Longinus by the Armenian Apostolic Church. Unlike its European cousins, this one is less a weapon than a religious icon, encrusted with jewels and mounted on an ornate cross. Its origins trace back to the 4th century, when Armenia became the first Christian nation. Desperate to cement its spiritual pedigree, Here, the spear isn't about conquest, it's about survival. For a small kingdom wedged between empires, possessing a relic tied to Christ's passion was a shield against cultural annihilation. The etchmiads in spear's embellishments tell a story of resilience, each gem added after invasions, each engraving a prayer for deliverance. But the most provocative rival might be the Antioch lance, discovered during the First Crusade in 1098. French soldiers digging beneath a church claimed to unearth a rusted spearhead, which they declared was the true lance, just in time to rally their starving troops for a miraculous victory. Skeptics later argued it was a plant, a morale-boosting hoax, yet the timing is suspiciously perfect. The Crusaders, fractured and desperate, needed divine intervention to unite them. What better than a relic that could transform their bloody campaign into a holy mission? The Antioch lance vanished soon after, but its brief appearance underscores a pattern. These relics emerge when power needs legitimizing and fade when their job is done. Why so many spears? The answer lies in the chaotic early centuries of Christianity, when countless churches and sects scrambled to establish their authority. With no central relic registry, every bishop, king, and monastery had incentive to discover their own piece of the divine. Jerusalem's fall in the 7th century scattered sacred objects further, as fleeing clergy smuggled what they could or claimed to. By the Middle Ages, the spear's duplication wasn't an accident, it was policy. Rulers needed tangible proof of God's favor, and if that meant hammering out a few extra lance heads, so be it. The competing claims also reflect deeper geopolitical fractures. The Vienna spear, championed by Holy Roman emperors, became a symbol of Western Christendom's might. The etchmiads inversion, meanwhile, anchored the Armenian Church's defiance against both Catholic and Orthodox dominance. Even the Vatican's lance, tucked behind gilded walls, served as a silent rebuttal to secular rulers who dared claim divine rights outside papal approval. These relics weren't just worshipped, they were wielded, each narrative crafted to undermine rivals and uplift allies. What's striking is how little the physical details matter. The Vienna spear has its nail, the Vatican's has its silver casing, Armenia's glitters with gems, but their true power was never in authenticity, it was in utility. A holy lance wasn't just a relic, it was a chess piece in the game of empires, moved across the board whenever faith needed to justify force, and that may be the most revealing truth of all. When it comes to the spear of destiny, there isn't one true version. There are only the stories we cling to and the battles we fight to keep them alive. The connection between the spear of destiny and the occult isn't just a footnote, it's a shadowy thread woven through some of history's most bizarre and chilling chapters. Long before Hitler fixated on the relic, mystics and secret societies were already spinning elaborate myths around its power. One of the strangest theories traces its origins not to Golgotha, but to the lost civilization of Atlantis. Occult writers like Helena Blavatsky, founder of Theosophy, claimed the spear was forged from an Atlantean metal alloy, imbued with ancient knowledge that could unlock hidden dimensions. According to her, the artifact survived the sinking of Atlantis, passing through the hands of Egyptian priests and Templar knights before reaching Rome, a timeline so fantastical it feels ripped from a pulp novel. Yet this very idea seeped into Nazi ideology, where the spear became recast as an Aryan relic, stolen by Jews and Christians but destined to return to its rightful owners. Then there's the Thule Society, the clandestine group that served as an incubator for Hitler's early inner circle. Their obsession with Hyperborean myths, tales of a polar utopia inhabited by Nordic supermen, blended seamlessly with the spear's legend. To Thule members, the relic wasn't merely a Christian symbol, it was a key to awakening ancestral Aryan powers. Rituals allegedly involved channeling energy from the spear into initiates, a twisted mimicry of medieval Christian rites. The Society's founder, Rudolf von Sebetendorf, even published coded texts suggesting the spear could pierce the veil between worlds, granting access to realms where Nazi victory was preordained. It's impossible to separate these delusions from Hitler's later actions, his insistence on launching Operation Barbarossa on specific astrological dates, or the SS's bizarre expeditions to Tibet in search of racial origins, all echo the Thule's fever dreams. Aleister Crowley, the self-proclaimed great beast of occultism, added another layer to the spear's mystique. Though he dismissed the Nazi obsession as childish demonolatry, his own writings referenced the lance as a wand of destiny, a tool for altering reality through willpower. Crowley's rituals, which blended Egyptian ceremonial magic with sex magic and drug-induced trances, proposed that objects like the spear were batteries for transcendental energy. His influence lingered in post-war conspiracy circles, where the spear re-emerged as a focal point for secretive groups like the Ordo Templi Orientis. Some modern occultists still perform rituals with replicas, convinced the original spear's energy imprint can be tapped remotely, a belief that would have horrified medieval Christians but feels eerily at home in today's esoteric underground. The most disturbing twist, how these fringe ideas metastasized into mainstream conspiracy theories. Post-war neo-Nazi groups, desperate to rehabilitate Hitler's legacy, repackaged the spear as proof of a hidden war between occult elites. Books like The Spear of Destiny by Trevor Ravenscroft, a sensationalist account mixing fact and fantasy, claimed the relic was stored in a CIA vault, its power harnessed for shadowy geopolitical schemes. Even the QAnon movement, with its obsession with storming the Vatican for secret relics, borrows from this playbook. The spear's journey from sacred relic to occult totem to conspiracy fetish reveals an uncomfortable truth myths adapt. They mutate to fit the anxieties of the age, whether that's medieval kings fearing divine wrath or modern internet subcultures hunting for evidence of a crumbling world order. What makes these theories so persistent isn't their logic, but their emotional grip. The spear, real or not, represents something primal, the human longing for a shortcut to power, a cheat code for destiny. And that's why it still haunts us, whether framed as Atlantean tech, Nazi superweapon, or Crowley's metaphysical tool. The spear of destiny endures not because of what it is, but because of what we're afraid it might be. Proof that history isn't random, that power can be stolen, and that some objects maybe hold secrets too dangerous to name. Hollywood has never been shy about borrowing from history's darkest legends, and the Spear of Destiny was practically tailor-made for the silver screen. Perhaps the most iconic portrayal comes from 2005's Constantine, where Keanu Reeves demon-hunting anti-hero battles to keep the spear out of Lucifer's hands. The film cranks the Relic's mystique to 11, depicting it as a literal key to unleashing hell on Earth, complete with apocalyptic storms and possessed souls. What's fascinating isn't just the exaggeration, but the twist. Here, the spear's power isn't about victory, it's about corruption. The longer anyone holds it, the more their soul rots, a far cry from the divine favor medieval kings believed it bestowed. It's a clever inversion, turning the legend into a cautionary tale about the price of chasing power. Video games, though, take the spear's mythos even further. In Wolfenstein, The New Order, Nazis wield it as a superweapon, channeling its energy to power nightmarish war machines. The game's alt history premise, where Hitler wins World War II, hinges on the spear's occult capabilities, blending real-world obsession with sci-fi spectacle. But the most chilling detail, the developers didn't just make this up. They borrowed straight from Nazi occult research, echoing actual SS experiments that sought to weaponize relics. It's fiction, yet uncomfortably close to the delusions that drove real historical figures. Literature, meanwhile, plays with the spear's ambiguity. In The Blood Gospel, a thriller co-authored by James Rowlands, the relic becomes part of a broader conspiracy involving Vatican secrets and ancient bloodlines. The novel treats it as a puzzle piece, one whose true significance shifts with each revelation. Unlike films or games, books often explore the psychological grip of the spear rather than its flashy powers. Take The Spear of Destiny by Marcus Sedgwick, a young novel where the artifact's legacy warps the minds of those who study it, turning academic curiosity into obsession. It's a quieter take, but no less haunting. The real danger isn't the spear itself, but what believing in it does to people. Even comic books get in on the action. DC's Hellblazer series, the inspiration for Constantine, frames the spear as one of many cursed objects in a world where magic and malice collide. Marvel, never one to be outdone, introduced its own version in Captain America comics, a Nazi-crafted duplicate used to brainwash heroes. These adaptations thrive on elasticity, stretching the spear's legend to fit any narrative from horror to superheroics. What ties all these depictions together isn't just creative license, it's a reflection of our own cultural anxieties. Whether it's films warning of demonic pacts or games depicting fascist dystopias, the Spear of Destiny endures because it's a blank slate for our deepest fears. Power, after all, is always a double-edged blade, and that's the real magic of the legend. It doesn't matter if the spear is real. What matters is that we keep retelling its story, each version a mirror for the monsters of our age. In medieval illuminated manuscripts, the Spear of Destiny often appears not as a weapon, but as a divine instrument, thin beams of gold light radiating from its tip as it pierces Christ's side. These early depictions, like those in the Gospel book of Otto Roman III from the 10th century, show the spear wielded by Longinus with almost reverential precision, his face bathed in celestial glow. The message is clear: this isn't violence, it's prophecy fulfilled. Artists leaned heavily on symbolism, wrapping the spear in layers of meaning. In the Sant. Alban's Psalter, the lance's shaft blooms with vines, echoing the tree of life, while drops of Christ's blood transform into rubies, a visual metaphor for redemption springing from suffering. By the Renaissance, the spear's portrayal sharpened into political allegory. Botticelli's Mystic Nativity tucks it subtly into the hands of an angel, its tip pointed downward like a scepter, a quiet nod to Florence's Medici rulers who fancied themselves as divinely ordained stewards of destiny. Meanwhile, Albrecht Dürer's The Large Passion series strips away the mysticism, presenting the spear as a brutal, utilitarian tool. His Longinus is no saintly convert but a soldier mid-thrust, muscles taut with effort, the spear's iron tip glinting coldly. The contrast is deliberate. Where medieval art spiritualized the spear, Renaissance masters humanized it, reflecting an era wrestling with the gritty intersection of faith and power. Baroque artists cranked the drama to operatic heights. Caravaggio's The Crucifixion of St. Peter hides the spear in shadow, its presence felt rather than seen, a looming threat just beyond the frame. This wasn't just artistic flair, it mirrored counter-reformation urgency where every brushstroke served as propaganda. The spear became a weapon of orthodoxy, its imagery deployed to stir awe and obedience. Rubens went further, painting it as a lightning rod of divine wrath in the descent from the cross, with storm clouds swirling around its tip as if heaven itself recoiled from its touch. But perhaps the most telling evolution lies in the details. In medieval art, the spear is often polished and pristine, floating ethereally. By the 18th century, artists like Tiepolo showed it rusted and pitted, its wood splintered, a relic stripped of glamour, much like the fading power of the church itself. Even its placement shifted. Once central to crucifixion scenes, it began drifting to the margins, overshadowed by crosses and mourning figures. The spear's diminishing prominence in art paralleled the Enlightenment's rise, where reason chipped away at relic worship. Yet the spear never fully vanished from canvas. In Goya's The Disasters of War, a faceless soldier impales a victim with a lance that eerily echoes Longinus's weapon, a savage critique of how faith and violence remain entwined. Modern artists like Anselm Kiefer resurrected too, embedding shattered spear replicas in lead folios, asking, When does a symbol of salvation become one of oppression? Across centuries, the spear's artistic journey reveals less about the object itself and more about the cultures that kept redrawing it, each stroke a confession of what they feared, worshipped, or longed to conquer. Why does a rusted spearhead or any ancient relic hold such sway over us? The answer may lie deep in our psychology, in the way human minds latch onto objects believed to carry sacred or cursed power. Across cultures and centuries, relics like the Spear of Destiny tap into universal archetypes, symbols so deeply embedded in our collective consciousness that they feel almost instinctive. Carl Jung called these archetypes of the collective unconscious, patterns of thought shared by humanity, like the hero, the trickster, or the Holy Grail. The spear fits neatly into this framework as a sacred weapon, a bridge between the mortal and divine, carrying the weight of numinous power. It's no accident that so many legends feature enchanted swords, divine arrows, or cursed daggers. These objects resonate because they mirror our innate longing for tools that can alter fate itself. But there's more at play than universal symbols. Relics also thrive on the psychology of contagion, the irrational but persistent belief that physical contact with an object transfers its essence. It's why pilgrims would travel thousands of miles to touch a saint's bones, or why Hitler trembled at the thought of losing the spear. Modern studies show this isn't just medieval superstition. In experiments, people hesitate to wear a sweater said to belong to a murderer, even when they know it's fictional. The same mental wiring that makes us recoil from a killer's glove makes us revere a saint's shroud or fear a tyrant's talisman. The Spear of Destiny, whether authentic or not, triggers this primal response. Its story whispers this isn't just metal, it's a vessel for something beyond understanding. Then there's collective memory, the way societies reshape relics to fit their needs. The spear didn't just accumulate legends, it became a mirror for each era's anxieties. To medieval Christians, it symbolized redemption. To Nazis, it represented racial supremacy. Today, conspiracists frame it as a hidden lever of global control. Each iteration says less about the object and more about the people wielding the narrative. This malleability is key. Unlike rigid historical facts, relics are porous, absorbing whatever meanings we pour into them. They become blank screens for projection, reflecting back our deepest hopes and fears. What's chilling is how easily belief in relics tips into obsession. The spear's history is littered with figures who didn't just venerate it, they needed it. Charlemagne's 47 battles, Hitler's bunker fantasies, even modern occultists performing rituals with replicas, all point to a dangerous truth. When we convince ourselves an object holds ultimate power, we risk handing it our free will. The spear's real curse isn't supernatural, it's the willingness to outsource agency to a piece of metal. Yet there's a flip side. Relics also serve as anchors for meaning in a chaotic world. For pilgrims, warriors, or even museum-goers today, they offer tangible connections to the intangible. The spear's endurance, despite every scientific debunking, proves how desperately we cling to objects that promise order in randomness. Maybe that's the ultimate lesson. Whether divine or delusional, the Spear of Destiny endures not because of what it is, but because of what it reveals about us: our hunger for transcendence, our terror of powerlessness, and our unshakable faith that somewhere in some dusty vault lies a key to unlocking destiny itself. Frederick Barbarossa, the fiery-haired Holy Roman Emperor who drowned in a shallow river during the Third Crusade, might seem an unlikely figure to chase the Spear of Destiny's legend. Yet his reign is steeped in eerie parallels to those who came before and after him, men who believed the spear's power could crown them conquerors. Unlike Charlemagne's battlefield theatrics or Otto the Great's coronation pomp, Barbarossa's connection to the relic is quieter, woven into the cracks between history and folklore. Chronicles from his court poet describe a lance carried into Italy during his brutal campaigns, one said to have glowed with divine fire when raised before his troops. Was this the same spear enshrined in Vienna? The records are vague, but the intent is clear. Barbarossa, like so many emperors, needed a symbol to transform his wars from political grabs into holy missions. Then there's Alaric the Visigoth, the barbarian king who sacked Rome in 410. Though separated from Barbarossa by centuries, their stories share a haunting rhythm. Alaric's siege of Rome wasn't just about loot, it was a calculated strike at the heart of Christendom, and legends claim he carried a holy lance plundered from Constantinople. The details are lost to time, but the pattern isn't. Whether Goth, Frank, or German, warlords kept reaching for the same narrative. That victory wasn't taken, but given, bestowed by relics that laundered violence into divine will. Even the Byzantine Empire, often seen as more sophisticated than its Western counterparts, played this game. Emperor Justinian reportedly sent a spear fragment, allegedly from Longinus' weapon, to his general Belisarius during the reconquest of Italy. The message wasn't subtle. By linking his armies to Christ's passion, Justinian framed his bloody campaigns as a spiritual reckoning. It worked. Troops who might have balked at dying for territory marched willingly under the banner of sacred war. What binds these figures together isn't just ambition, but a shared desperation. Barbarossa fought papal enemies who called him a tyrant. Alaric ruled a people dismissed as savages. Justinian clung to a fractured empire. The spear of destiny, or any relic like it, offered something no army could: legitimacy. To hold it was to rewrite one's story, from plunderer to prophet, from usurper to God's handpicked champion. And that alchemy, turning base metal into divine right, proved more potent than any battlefield tactic. Yet the darkest thread in this tapestry isn't the leaders who won with the spear's myth, but those who unraveled without it. Take Frederick II, Barbarossa's grandson, who mocked relic worship as theater for peasants. His skepticism made him the most enlightened ruler of his age and the most reviled. Excommunicated twice, his corpse left to rot in a public square, Frederick's fate became a warning whispered in royal courts: deny the symbols and the mobs will deny you. Perhaps that's the spear's true lesson. Its power was never about magic. It was about stagecraft, the unspoken pact between rulers, and the rule that some props must never be exposed as wood and paint. Because when the curtain falls, so do empires, and no one knew that better than the men who clung to a rusted lance, praying it could convince the world they were chosen. In Christian theology, the spear of destiny occupies a paradoxical space, venerated by some as a sacred conduit to divine will, dismissed by others as mere superstition. For Eastern Orthodox believers, relics like the spear are far more than historical artifacts. They're considered materia sancta, physical vessels imbued with God's grace. The Orthodox tradition emphasizes theoses, the process of becoming one with God's energies, and objects tied to Christ's passion are seen as portals to that transformation. The spear, particularly in Armenian and Greek Orthodoxy, is often displayed during Holy Week, its iron tip kissed by worshippers as a tactile connection to the crucifixion's mystery. Yet even here caution lingers. The Council of Trullo in 691 warned against worshipping relics more than Christ, a nuance often lost in popular devotion. The spear's holiness, then, isn't inherent but derivative, a window, not the view. Catholic theology offers a more structured approach. The spear falls under the category of sacramentals, objects like rosaries or holy water that prepare the faithful to receive grace. Unlike sacraments, which the Church teaches are instituted by Christ, sacramentals gain power through tradition and collective belief. The Vatican's lance, encased in silver and rarely displayed, embodies this duality. Popes have neither confirmed nor denied its authenticity, focusing instead on its symbolic value. St. Thomas Aquinas weighed in indirectly, arguing that relics move the soul to devotion, but cannot compel divine action. This distinction became critical during the Reformation, when Protestants accused Catholics of idolatry for venerating objects like the spear. The Counter-Reformation response: A renewed emphasis on relics as signs, not sources of faith. Protestant perspectives predictably vary widely. Luther himself dismissed the spear as a Romish fable, echoing his broader rejection of intermediary objects between humanity and God. Calvin went further, calling relic veneration a circus of distraction. Yet even within Reformed traditions, exceptions emerge. Some Anglican and Lutheran scholars frame the spear as a theological metaphor, a reminder of Christ's suffering eclipsing any magical claim. Modern evangelical circles, meanwhile, often ignore it entirely, prioritizing scripture over tangible links to biblical events. The tension between these views reveals a deeper theological fault line. Does physical proximity to the sacred enhance faith or dilute it? Orthodox and Catholic traditions answer yes, framing the spear as a bridge between heaven and earth. Protestants largely say no, insisting true worship requires no artifacts. But perhaps the most intriguing perspective comes from mystics like Meister Eckhart, who wrote that the lance that pierced Christ's side was but a shadow of the love that pierces every soul. Here, the spear transcends debate, becoming less an object to possess than a lesson to embody. In the end, the spear of destiny's religious significance lies not in its metal, but in the questions it forces believers to confront. Is devotion strengthened by touching a relic, or does it risk becoming a crutch? Can an object mediate divine presence without eclipsing it? These aren't just theological puzzles, they're mirrors reflecting how each tradition understands the very nature of faith itself. The internet has become a breeding ground for wild, tangled tales about the spear of destiny, stories that blend half-truths, paranoia, and a dash of Hollywood flair. One persistent theory claims the spear displayed in Vienna is a fake, swapped out by Allied forces after World War II and hidden in a CIA black site or a Vatican vault. Proponents point to minor inconsistencies in museum records or blurry photos as proof, ignoring the exhaustive provenance studies conducted by historians. Then there's the Illuminati angle. Forums buzz with claims that shadowy elites, whether Freemasons, Bilderbergers, or reptilian overlords, use the spear to manipulate global events. Some even allege it's a frequency weapon, emitting waves that brainwash populations into submission. Never mind that the spear is, scientifically speaking, just an old piece of iron. In the conspiracy underworld, facts are flexible, and the grander the fiction, the faster it spreads. A darker subset of theories ties the spear to apocalyptic prophecies, particularly in evangelical and doomsday circles. Certain end-times preachers cite the Book of Revelation's sharp sword from Christ's mouth as code for the spear of destiny, arguing its reappearance will trigger the rapture. Online, these ideas mutate into hybrid myths like the claim that the spear must be activated by bloodshed in Jerusalem, or that it's secretly stored beneath the Temple Mount, waiting for the Antichrist to wield it. The sources, often self-published books, obscure YouTube channels, or viral posts stripped of context. What's revealing isn't the theories themselves, but their persistence. In an age of uncertainty, the spear becomes a narrative shortcut, a way to impose order on chaos. The cultural impact is undeniable. These fringe ideas bleed into mainstream entertainment, fueling TV shows like The X-Files or video games like Assassin's Creed, where the spear is recast as a tool of secret societies. Even politicians aren't immune. During the Cold War, a West German minister casually referenced the spear in a speech about Soviet threats, accidentally sparking tabloid panic about Nazi occult weapons being rediscovered. Today, the same tropes resurface in QAnon adjacent circles, where the spear gets lumped into convoluted yarns about deep state Satanists and stolen elections. What's missing from these tales is any reckoning with why they resonate. The spear of destiny, for all its myth, reflects a very human craving for patterns, for villains, for the idea that history isn't random. Conspiracies offer the illusion of control, a script where every war and disaster is part of some grand design, and that's the real power of the legend. Not in the iron, but in the stories we keep forging. Today, the Spear of Destiny rests under carefully controlled lighting in Vienna's Hofburg Palace, its once bloodied tip now encased behind layers of bulletproof glass in the imperial treasury. Visitors winding through the museum's labyrinthine halls encounter it as part of the Insignian and Reliquian collection, a carefully curated display of crowns, orbs, and other symbols of Habsburg power. But the spear isn't just another artifact here. It's the star attraction, positioned at a dramatic angle so the crack running through its iron core catches the light, a deliberate staging choice meant to echo its fractured history. The accompanying placard offers dry historical notes, but the real storytelling happens in the hushed tones of tour guides who lean in to whisper about Hitler's obsession or Charlemagne's curse. Security here is tighter than in most royal vaults. Motion sensors track every gesture toward the case, while uniformed guards linger just beyond the velvet ropes, their eyes sharp for overly eager hands. In 2008, after a spate of relic thefts across Europe, the museum added millimeter-wave scanners at the entrance, not just for weapons, but for tools that could bypass the spear's molecular alarm triggers. It's an irony that hasn't gone unnoticed. An object once carried into battle now treated like radioactive material, its protection as meticulous as its mythology. Yet the spear's modern life isn't just about preservation. It's a carefully marketed experience. The museum shop sells replica spear pendants, their packaging stamped with dramatic taglines like "Own a Piece of Destiny." Special evening tours, timed to coincide with solstices or eclipses, frame the relic as a nexus of energy, capitalizing on New Age fascination with sacred geometry and ley lines. For an extra fee, visitors can attend curator talks dissecting the nail embedded in its base, though the presentation carefully avoids endorsing any supernatural claims. Recent exhibitions have leaned into the spear's pop culture allure. A 2019 showcase titled Power and Prophecy paired it with medieval manuscripts and, somewhat controversially, a clip from Constantine, blurring the line between scholarship and spectacle. The gamble paid off. Attendance spiked 40%, proof that even in the 21st century, the spear's legend still pulls crowds. But what's most revealing is how the display avoids closure. Unlike other relics presented with neat historical summaries, the spear's placard ends with an open question. Do objects shape history, or do we shape them? It's a quiet challenge to visitors walking away, one that lingers long after the palace doors close behind them. From the dimly lit crypts of European cathedrals to the glossy showrooms of private collectors, replicas of the Spear of Destiny have multiplied like echoes of an ancient whisper. Walk into Rome's Basilica of St. Peter, and you'll find a silver-cased lance tip enshrined as the true spear despite Vienna's rival claim. Travel to Armenia's Etchmiadzin Cathedral, and another jewel-encrusted version glints under candlelight. These aren't mere copies, they're competing chapters in a story where faith and fabrication blur. Medieval artisans often crafted replicas not to deceive but to democratize holiness, allowing pilgrims who'd never reached Jerusalem to touch a fragment of the divine. Some were even stamped with tiny lead seals certifying their authenticity, an early form of religious branding, but not all duplicates were so pious. The 19th century saw a surge in forgeries tailored for wealthy collectors obsessed with biblical relics. One notorious example surfaced in 1896, when a Parisian antiquarian sold a lost spearhead to an American industrialist, complete with forged papal documents tracing it to St. Helena. Carbon dating later exposed it as a cleverly aged 11th century Moorish dagger. Another, still displayed in a Croatian monastery, was revealed to be a repurposed Ottoman cavalry lance after a monk accidentally chipped its gilding during cleaning, exposing Turkic inscriptions underneath. These fakes did more than swindle buyers, they tangled the spear's provenance, making it harder to separate history from hucksterism. reenactments add another layer to the confusion. During Hitler's reign, Nazi officials commissioned exact replicas for occult rituals, believing mass-produced spears could amplify their Aryan energy. Post-war, some ended up in bizarre places like a Bavarian castle turned hotel, where guests unknowingly dined beneath a wall-mounted SS replica until a historian recognized its grim pedigree. Meanwhile, modern hobbyists wield DIY versions at medieval fairs. Their foam and resin lances a far cry from the original's weight, but no less potent as symbols. The most chilling replication, though, isn't physical. Digital scans of the Vienna spear now circulate online, allowing armchair occultists to 3D print their own cursed copies. One Reddit thread documents a user who claimed his replica caused poltergeist activity until a commenter pointed out his hauntings matched the sound of his malfunctioning fridge. Whether sacred or synthetic, these doubles keep the legend alive, proving that the Spear of Destiny's true power lies not in metal, but in the stories we refuse to let die. The quest to validate the Spear of Destiny's origins through archaeology isn't just a scholarly debate, it's a minefield of faith, politics, and ethical dilemmas. Imagine a team of excavators breaking ground near Jerusalem's Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where some traditions claim the spear was discovered by Saint Helena. The moment their trowels scrape against rusted iron, the world would hold its breath. Could this be the tip of Longinus's lance, or just another ancient weapon lost to time? The problem is, even if archaeologists uncovered a 1st-century Roman spearhead near Golgotha, proving it pierced Christ's side would be impossible with current technology. Carbon dating might confirm its age, but no test exists to link it to a specific historical moment, let alone a miracle. This hasn't stopped speculation. In 2012, Turkish researchers controversially claimed to have located the spear in Antioch's Church of St. Peter, citing medieval accounts of crusaders hiding it there. Their announcement sparked protests from local Christian communities, who accused them of sensationalizing sacred history. Similar tensions erupted in Vienna when scientists proposed drilling into the spear's embedded nail for DNA analysis. Clergy blocked the move, arguing that tampering with relics violates their sanctity regardless of what secrets they might hold. These clashes reveal a deeper conflict. Does uncovering the truth serve faith or undermine it? For believers, the spear's power lies in its symbolism, not its provenance, but for archaeologists, leaving questions unanswered feels like surrendering to myth. The ethical stakes escalate when private collectors enter the fray. Black market dealers have fueled a shadowy trade in fake biblical relics, from splinters of the true cross to nails from the crucifixion. In 2018, Israeli authorities raided a Jerusalem apartment stocked with forged artifacts, including a spearhead coated in artificial rust to mimic antiquity. These scams don't just dupe wealthy buyers, they muddy the waters for legitimate research. Every fraud makes it harder to take genuine discoveries seriously, poisoning the well for scholars who rely on funding and public trust. Yet the most contentious issue isn't fraud, it's colonialism's lingering shadow. Many sacred artifacts, from the Benin bronzes to the Elgin marbles, were looted during imperial occupations and now sit in Western museums. The Spear of Destiny, too, passed through conquering hands, from Crusaders to Habsburgs to Nazis. Today, who gets to decide where it belongs? Austria defends its custody as preservation, while Palestinian archaeologists argue it's part of their cultural heritage, stripped away by centuries of foreign rule. These debates aren't just about ownership, they're about who controls the narrative of history itself. Perhaps the greatest irony is how the spear's legend thrives on uncertainty. If a dig somehow confirmed its authenticity beyond doubt, would it lose its mystique or gain new power? Faith and mystery have always been intertwined. The moment we strip one away, we risk losing the other. The Spear of Destiny endures not because we've proven its truth, but because we're still chasing it. and in that chase we reveal more about ourselves than we ever could about an ancient piece of iron. The shadow of prophecy has long clung to the spear of destiny, twisting its legend into a harbinger of apocalyptic reckonings. Among the most chilling interpretations is its alleged role in the rise of the Antichrist, a claim rooted in cryptic passages from the Book of Revelation. Medieval theologians like Adso of Montier-en-Der spun elaborate tales of the spear as the weapon of the false Messiah, a tool that would one day be wielded to deceive nations. This idea gained grim traction during the Black Death, when panicked crowds interpreted the plague as a sign of the end times, pointing to the spear's rumored disappearance from Vienna as proof the Antichrist was near. Even the spear's return after the pandemic only deepened the mystique, with some clerics declaring it a divine test of faith. Centuries later, the same fears resurfaced during the turmoil of the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther's opponents circulated pamphlets depicting the spear in the hands of a beastly figure labeled Rome's false prophet, a not-so-subtle jab at the papacy. Conversely, Catholic preachers warned that Luther himself would seize the relic to pierce the church anew. These weren't just theological skirmishes, they reflected a world where political upheaval and religious dread fused into prophecy. The spear became a Rorschach test for existential fears. Whatever crisis gripped society, someone would link it to the artifact's curse. The 19th century sharpened these prophecies into political weapons. As Europe lurched toward industrialization, millenarian cults sprang up, many fixated on the spear as a countdown clock to Armageddon. British preacher John Nelson Darby, architect of modern dispensationalism, taught that the spear's rediscovery would precede the rapture, a belief that still echoes in some evangelical circles today. Meanwhile, Russian mystic Helena Blavatsky wove the spear into her theosophist visions, claiming it held astral codes that would activate during a coming global cataclysm. These predictions might seem fringe now, but they reveal a pattern. In times of radical change, the spear transforms from relic to omen, a focal point for collective anxiety. No era weaponized these prophecies more brutally than the 20th century. Nazi occultists, already obsessed with the spear, reinterpreted Christian eschatology through a twisted lens. Heinrich Himmler's Onanab researchers circulated memos positing that controlling the spear would trigger the Antichrist's reign, a reign they intended to lead. Post-war conspiracy theorists flipped the script, alleging the Allies hid the spear to delay doomsday, or that the Vatican secretly wielded it to manipulate world events. Even the Cold War's existential dread found expression through the relic. Soviet propaganda occasionally referenced it as evidence of Western, mystical warmongering, while American televangelists like Hal Lindsey tied its whereabouts to nuclear brinkmanship. What's revealing isn't the accuracy of these prophecies, it's their adaptability. The spear's legend bends to fit every crisis, from pandemics to ideological wars. Its power lies not in fulfilling predictions, but in reflecting them, offering a tangible symbol for humanity's oldest terror. That history might not be random, but barreling toward some scripted, inevitable end. Whether as Antichrist's weapon or divine safeguard, the spear of destiny endures because it lets us stare into the abyss and see a shape staring back. Power is never just about force, it's about symbols, and few objects prove this more chillingly than the spear of destiny. Across centuries, rulers haven't just wielded it, they've weaponized its legend, twisting faith into a crowbar for control. Take the medieval concept of divine right, where kings like Charlemagne and Otto the Great didn't merely claim the throne. They staged coronations with the spear in hand, broadcasting a message as sharp as its blade. This isn't ambition, it's destiny. The relic became a divine stamp of approval, a way to silence dissenters with the ultimate retort. Who are you to question God's chosen? But here's the uncomfortable truth. The spear's power didn't flow from its iron. It flowed from collective belief, carefully cultivated by those who stood to benefit most. This symbiosis of myth and manipulation didn't fade with knights and castles. Modern nationalism repackaged the same tricks. Hitler didn't just steal the spear, he rebranded it, draping its Christian origins in pseudo-pagan occultism to fit his Aryan supremacist ideology. The Nazis didn't need the spear to be authentically holy, they needed it to feel holy to their followers. It's a playbook still in use today. From political rallies staged like religious revivals to flags treated as sacred totems, the core tactic remains: fuse identity to symbols so tightly that criticism feels like blasphemy. The spear's journey from altar to arsenal reveals a pattern. When faith and power entwine, the object itself matters less than the frenzy it inspires. Yet the allure isn't solely top-down. Symbols like the spear endure because they tap into a human hunger for transcendence, for connection to something larger than ourselves. Pilgrims who kissed its blade in medieval Vienna weren't just obeying kings, they were seeking miracles. Modern conspiracy theorists who spin tales of its hidden energy aren't merely gullible, they're grappling with a world that feels increasingly chaotic. The irony, this genuine spiritual longing, is what makes such symbols so easily hijacked. A relic can be both a comfort to the devout and a weapon for the ruthless, often simultaneously. The ethical dilemma sharpens when we ask who gets to control the narrative. For centuries, the spear's story was dictated by emperors and popes. Today, it's debated by historians, claimed by fringe groups, even commodified by museums selling replica pendants. Each reframing shifts its power, but rarely neuters it. Consider how modern extremists mythologize Viking runes or Crusader crosses, stripping them of historical context to serve new agendas. The spear warns us symbols don't corrupt, people do, and the most dangerous corruption isn't forging relics, it's forging meaning, bending shared myths to justify division or domination. Perhaps the real question isn't whether the spear of destiny holds power, but why we're so desperate to believe it does. From divine right to demagoguery, its legend mirrors our oldest paradox, the need for sacred anchors in a world where power is always inevitably human. And that's the lesson that lingers long after the tales of curses and conquerors fade. The most potent magic isn't in the spear, it's in us. The moment we forget that, we risk letting symbols become shackles and faith a weapon turned against itself. Even after centuries of scrutiny, the spear of destiny clings to its enigmas, leaving us with more questions than answers. Take Hitler's fanatical fixation. Was it merely a propaganda tool, a theatrical prop to legitimize his regime? Or did he, like Charlemagne and Napoleon before him, genuinely believe the relic held supernatural power? Historians remain divided. Some point to his meticulous staging of Nazi rituals around the spear as evidence of cold calculation, a way to mythologize his rise. Others cite private accounts from confidants like Otto, who described Hitler's trembling hands when handling the artifact, his whispered fears of losing it as Allied forces closed in. This wasn't just symbolism, it was the obsession of a man who'd staked his empire on the idea that destiny could be stolen. Then there's the spear's murky origins. Scientific dating places it in the early medieval period, but that nail embedded in its core, could it be a Roman fragment, a sliver of the true cross hammered into the blade centuries later? Archaeologists debate whether this was a deliberate act of sanctification or a later forgery to boost its pedigree. The Vatican's lance, Armenia's jeweled version, and the lost Antioch spear each add layers to the puzzle. If none are definitively authentic, why have so many cultures fought to claim their own true relic? The answer might lie in psychology rather than history. Objects like this thrive on ambiguity, their power growing in the gaps between fact and faith. Perhaps the most haunting question is why the legend endures despite every scientific debunking. Medieval pilgrims didn't have carbon dating, but we do, and yet the spear's allure hasn't dimmed. Conspiracy theories still flourish, from CIA vaults to Antarctic Nazi bunkers. Museums market its replicas and occultists perform rituals with 3D printed copies. The real mystery isn't the spear's past, but our present, why we keep resurrecting its myth in an age of satellites and gene editing. Maybe it's because some truths aren't about evidence. They're about the stories we can't let go of, the ones that whisper, what if destiny isn't just chance? What if it's something you can hold? For every answer, a new riddle emerges. Did the Habsburgs know their spear was a replica, or did they too succumb to its crafted mystique? Why did Patton, a man who scoffed at superstition, reportedly pause when holding it? And if the spear's power was always an illusion, why does its absence in modern conflicts feel, to some, like a warning? These aren't just academic puzzles. They're mirrors reflecting our own relationship with belief, power, and the fragile line between history and myth. The spear's greatest trick isn't surviving the centuries, it's making us wonder, after all this time, if we've underestimated it. From the blood-soaked earth of Golgotha to the climate-controlled display cases of Vienna, the Spear of Destiny has carved a path through history unlike any other relic. It began as a simple soldier's tool, an iron lance lost to time, but became a canvas for humanity's deepest fears and grandest ambitions. Emperors like Charlemagne and Otto the Great brandished it as proof of divine favor, while Hitler's fanatical grip turned it into a nightmare of occult obsession. Yet beneath the layers of gold leaf and legend, the spear remains stubbornly ordinary, a fractured piece of medieval metal with a nail wedged inside. That tension between the mundane and the miraculous is where its true power lies. What's fascinating isn't just how the spear shaped history, but how history kept reshaping the spear. Every era projected its own anxieties onto it. To medieval Christians, it was a sacred key to redemption. To Renaissance kings, a political prop. To Nazis, a supernatural weapon. Today, it's a museum piece dissected by scientists and a conspiracy magnet for online sleuths. This chameleon-like quality reveals something startling: the spear never changed. We did. Our wars, our faith crises, our hunger for meaning, they're the real forces that kept this relic alive. The lesson here isn't about authenticity. It's about allure. Whether forged in Jerusalem or 8th century Germany, the Spear of Destiny endures because it answers a primal human need. To believe that destiny isn't random, that power can be held, that history has a script. But the darker truth, every ruler who clutched this object, from Habsburg emperors to 20th century tyrants, was chasing the same illusion. That dominion comes from divine right, not deeds. The spear's real curse wasn't supernatural. It was the arrogance of those who thought possessing it made them invincible. So where does that leave us? Standing before its display case in Vienna, we're left with a choice. Do we see a holy relic, a historical oddity, or a warning? Maybe all three. Because the spear's greatest power isn't in its past, it's in the questions it forces us to ask today. How thin is the line between faith and folklore? Why do we keep handing our agency to symbols? And what happens when we confuse legend for destiny? Now it's your turn. Divine tool or human construct, a conduit for miracles or a mirror for our obsessions? Drop your thoughts below, and remember, the most dangerous weapons aren't the ones we can hold, but the stories we choose to